getting eaten by my own tree. Hi, my name is Margaret and welcome to my artsy corner of the internet. It's the holiday season, which means the Nutcracker is in full swing. And today I'm going to tell you guys all about the history of the Nutcracker because you know what? I love the Nutcracker. This is going to be like the basics. As I was researching, I was like, ooh, I want to go into so many specifics, but I was like, stop, don't overwhelm them. The Nutcracker Ballet is based off of the 1816 novel by E.T.A. Hoffmann. Fun fact, I was in a knockoff, not a knockoff, but it was like a holiday play about the Nutcracker, but it wasn't the Nutcracker. It was called Holiday Dream. I was Clara. But of course, in that production, Clara was not the lead because I am cursed to just never have a leading role in anything. And one of my lines that I was like, the Nutcracker was written by E.T.A. Hoffmann. I think I played the teacher's pet, basically, which might be accurate, but I knew that fact because it was a line in a Christmas play. Anyway, E.T.A. Hoffmann. He was a German. So the Nutcracker was written in 1816 by E.T.A. Hoffmann. It was originally entitled The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Hang on. I'm on a mission now. So this is the original one. Although this is not, this just says the Nutcracker. It's not the Nutcracker, it is the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. And E.T.A. Hoffmann was like a lawyer or a judge. He did something in the judicial system, but he was also like a composer and an author, and he was truly a Renaissance man, except for he was part of the Romantic era, not the Renaissance. But he wrote The Nutcracker and the Mouse King, and his story is definitely a lot darker. It's not like dark, but it's a little dark. Definitely darker than the ballet. And one of the reasons why is because in 1844, Alexander Dumas created this, which is the Nutcracker. But I think the technical title is The History of a Nutcracker. And this is actually a retelling of E.T.A. Hoffmann's original tale. Alexander Dumas's version actually became a lot more popular. You probably know Dumas from Count of Monte Cristo. He was a very popular author at the time, and so when he did a retelling of this book, his retelling, I think, became a lot more popular than Hoffmann's original tale. But Dumas also made it a lot more family-friendly, good vibes. I actually have not finished his version, but that's what I've read. Anyway, the Imperial Russian Ballet eventually caught wind of Dumas's tale, and they thought that the Nutcracker would be a great idea for a ballet. And so they commissioned Petipa and Tchaikovsky to create this new ballet. Although the ballet, as I kind of said, is a very shortened version of E.T.A. Hoffmann, but it's also a shortened version of Dumas's tale. Hoffmann's story has this entire interlude called The Tale of a Hard Nut, and it's all about how the Nutcracker came to be. Which is actually Mark Morris, who is a modern dance choreographer, has his rendition of the Nutcracker called The Hard Nut. So there you go. As I said, Peter Tchaikovsky, Peter? I'm just going to call him Peter. Tchaikovsky, no, I'm not going to call him Peter. I'm going to call him Tchaikovsky, apparently. Tchaikovsky was the one who wrote the ballet music. And now Tchaikovsky is like a household name for ballet dancers because he composed Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and the Nutcracker. Those are his 3 ballets. And the Nutcracker was the 3rd of those. I remember the first time I found out that he did 3 ballets. I was like, he had to have done more because he's so iconic. But really, it's the Nutcracker and then also Swan Lake. 2 of the 3 ballets that he did were the most well-known ballets. So that's why we know him. Sleeping Beauty was also a huge success at its original premiere. Anyway, getting off topic again. Tchaikovsky was commissioned to start working on this in about 1891. And he started working on it, but he got composer's block pretty badly. Tchaikovsky actually asked for an extension when working on the Nutcracker because he just could not get the music out. Tchaikovsky was having a difficult season of life. He was going through a lot of things personally, and I think that was probably the stunt on his music. I don't know. I never knew him. I was not alive in the 1800s, but that's what I would assume. Also, a fun fact, he actually traveled to America, and he was a conductor at the opening of Carnegie Hall in America. So during the time that he was composing the Nutcracker, sorry, there was dust, he went to Carnegie to help open it. I don't know. I always think it's fun when you can kind of contextualize things that you're learning about history into another moment. So anyway, that was happening at the same time. But then after that, he went back to Europe, to France specifically. And at the time, he actually learned that his sister had passed. The whole tale of Tchaikovsky writing the Nutcracker is something I'd love to deep dive into. But basically, He was having a rough time, but he finally completed the Nutcracker score. This is my own personal opinion time now, but I truly think that like because he was grieving as he was writing the Nutcracker, I think that's why the score resonates with so many people, because the holidays are so happy and joyous and it's like the most wonderful time of the year. That was not the right melody. A lot of people also talk about how the holidays can be the hardest time of the year because for as joyous as they are and are supposed to be, there's also often this like melancholic presence that sometimes just encases the holiday season. And I think because Tchaikovsky was going through that grieving process while writing holiday music, there's no way to really like separate those two. Whatever you're feeling kind of comes through in your art. I think that there are these moments of the Nutcracker with very happy, boisterous songs, but there is this underlying feeling of like a very real human melancholy. And I do believe that that is why the music is so impactful even till today. He also used this instrument called the celesta, or a bell piano, which was not popular at the time, but he literally had it brought in for the Nutcracker because he said, to quote him, he heard the voice of the sugar plum fairy in the bells. And that's just dipping our toe into the story of Tchaikovsky. But moving on, we're going to talk about Marius Petipa. Now, he is like a giant of the ballet, right? He was the choreographer for the Nutcracker. Maybe, kind of. We'll get to it. But Marius Petipa, huge name. He basically is classical ballet. Like, when you think about the classical era of ballet, it is Marius Petipa. The classical period was happening mostly in Russia, and Petipa was the main choreographer in Russia at the time. So we had romantic ballet before, and we've had like neoclassical and Balanchine and a bunch of stuff afterwards, but like the classical period of classical ballet is like kind of like the age of Petipa. Anyway, he did a lot of huge ballets that you probably still know today, including the Nutcracker. However, we don't actually know if he choreographed the Nutcracker. So the story goes, right? So he's coming off of like Sleeping Beauty with Tchaikovsky. It was a huge success. In the middle of the Nutcracker, he gets sick. He falls ill. He can no longer choreograph the ballet. So his assistant, Lev Ivanov, takes over. We don't know to this day how much of the choreography Petipa did versus Ivanov. We don't know if Petipa did like 95% and Ivanov came in at the very end. We don't know if Marius Petipa did 0 and Ivanov did everything. Usually the choreography is attributed to Petipa just because, you know, he was like the big name. He was the one who started and was like originally hired for the role. But yeah, we don't actually know. But to be completely honest, with the Nutcracker, it doesn't really matter because like with Swan Lake, I went to see it in like 2019 and they were like, we are still performing the exact same choreography that Petipa did in the 1800s. With the Nutcracker, though, we do not actually have enough information about the original staging to restage the original. We have no idea what the choreography for the 1892 version, we don't know what it looked like. So does it really matter who choreographed it? But, okay, this is another thing that's kind of fun that I forgot to mention. When they started creating the music for the Nutcracker, Petipa told Tchaikovsky like exactly what he wanted. He told him like, I want the Spanish dance to be at this tempo. I want it to be this number of bars or measures. So it's exactly this length. Like he dictated every little detail about what he wanted for the musical score. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know if that was super typical during this time or not as typical, but that was how Petipa impacted the music. There's also a kind of funny conspiracy theory. It's not funny, but I think it's kind of funny. That perhaps Petipa faked being sick because the Nutcracker was not going well. Like the choreography was not going well. He did not like the way it was going. And so he was just like, I'm sick. And made his assistant finish it. No, listen, I was not there. Nobody was there. Well, people were there, but like they're not here if they were there. And I'm not here to like slander Petipa's moral compass, but I think that would be hilarious. But somehow the Nutcracker all came together, although creating it was a little bit of a rocky road. And I wrote in my notes that it premiered in 1982. That's simply not right. In 1892, in Russia, in St. Petersburg, the Imperial Russian Ballet premiered the Nutcracker. It was actually a double billed premiere. So Tchaikovsky made the Nutcracker, and then he also made an opera called Ilanta. Ilanta. The opera went over great, and the Nutcracker, People hated it. Like, they did not like the Nutcracker at all. Tchaikovsky said, I'm going to read this quote. He said, apparently the opera gave pleasure, but the ballet, not really. And as a matter of fact, in spite of all the sumptuousness, it did turn out to be rather boring. He even said that it was infinitely worse than Sleeping Beauty. And Sleeping Beauty had been the last ballet that he had choreographed, and that was a huge success. So yeah, but it wasn't just the music. Let's be clear. Tchaikovsky was not the only failure in this ballet, according to the general public. Actually, 9 months prior to the premiere of the ballet, they had premiered the Nutcracker Suite, which is a shorter list of songs from the Nutcracker, and it was actually performed by an orchestra, and people liked it then. It had a much better reception than the actual ballet. But people called the costumes and the sets of the ballet tasteless, and a lot of them really did not like the ballet dancer who performed the Sugar Plum Fairy. And another huge critique, which is, the Nutcracker is definitely not a normal ballet. And one of the reasons why is because the Sugar Plum Fairy is like the prima ballerina role. And usually the star of the ballet and like a prima ballet dancer is on stage for the majority of the ballet because they're the lead. But in the Sugar Plum Fairy, she did not come on stage until like the end of Act 2, which, because it was a double billed premiere, means that the prima ballet dancer did not even get on stage until like almost midnight. So imagine like going to the ballet and then not even seeing the prima ballerina until like midnight. Right? I know, you're so cute. Okay, would you like to sit right there? Okay, sorry, we're back. We had a slight break and I'm here with my dog. So if you hear things, it's my dog. People also really didn't like the ballet because students from the Imperial Ballet School were used. So there were lots of children on stage, which of course, when we think about the Nutcracker today, we're like, yes, there are cute little like 4-year-olds dressed up as little mice battling 5-year-olds dressed up as toy soldiers, and it's adorable. But at the time, the people were kind of like, I paid to see a professional ballet. Why am I watching children? So they really did not like the use of the student. And so it led to people calling the ballet unprofessional. One critic, Alexander Benoit, said, quote, one cannot understand anything. Disorderly pushing about from corner to corner and running backwards and forwards. Quite amateurish. And that was about the battle scene, which, to be fair, the battle scene is quite chaotic. But I think now we find it endearing. Back then, they were just kind of like, what am I watching? So obviously the premiere did not go great, but how did we get from like a disastrous premiere to the Nutcracker being one of the most well-known ballets? So it was actually those orchestras playing the Nutcracker Suite that kind of kept it in like public consciousness. Hi, are you coming to grace me with your presence? Yes. Delightful, thank you. Tchaikovsky actually died in 1893 thinking that his music was a failure. However, it was actually his music that kept the Nutcracker alive. Do you remember about the Nutcracker Suite, the smaller sampling of songs that was premiered before the ballet? That was actually quite popular with orchestras, and it was actually this suite that kind of kept the music and the Nutcracker in public consciousness long enough for it to eventually get picked up again, next time by Disney. Yes, Disney plays a role in this. In the 1940s, Disney came along and they released Fantasia, which was an animated movie set to classical music. And in Fantasia, they used the Nutcracker Suite. So almost like 100 years after Dumas's retelling of the story, and almost 50 years. Yeah, almost 50 years, maybe a little over 50 years. About 50 years after the original premiere of the ballet, it was kind of revitalized by Disney. Now that the American people knew the ballet music, it was actually the San Francisco Ballet that in 1944 re-premiered the Nutcracker, the ballet, but this time in America. So the San Francisco Ballet ended up premiering the Nutcracker in America on December 24th, 1944. So they definitely kept with the tradition of let's do it near Christmas time, because if you do it near Christmas time, easier to sell, I guess, The success of the Nutcracker, I feel like, it's all about timing and just the way that these things happened, divine timing all at once to happen in like a perfect storm to help make it successful. And so there were lots of things that the San Francisco Ballet kind of capitalized off of that I don't know if they intentionally capitalized off of it, but things that were happening in the world helped make it more of a success. So William Christensen was the artistic director of the time for this ballet. And of course, in 1940, only 4 years before, Fantasia had come out. So a lot of people knew the music music. You're probably more likely to go see a ballet if you know the music. But also, World War II was coming to a close. Technically, V-Day, I don't think was until May 8th, 1945. So we're still a couple months away, but at this point there had definitely been like a major shift in the war. And what I didn't know, and I'm so fascinated, I want to do more research on this, but soldiers who were returning from Germany in the war actually brought back nutcrackers for their loved ones. So nutcrackers originate in Germany, which is probably why the nutcracker's set in Germany, but they originate in Germany. And so a lot of soldiers brought them back as like souvenirs, which like souvenirs from war is really quite an odd concept when you really think about it. But that would make sense, you know, if like your loved one just returned from war, it's almost the holiday season, first holiday since like the Great Depression and World War II. Now the ones that you love are home, they brought you a nutcracker. Now there's a Nutcracker ballet that's going to be happening, and the music to the Nutcracker you learned from Fantasia 4 years earlier. It's kind of like that perfect storm. Anyway, I just thought that was fascinating. I had no idea that World War II soldiers brought nutcrackers home. I also didn't know that nutcrackers were German, but the more you know. So the Nutcracker was definitely a very big success for the San Francisco Ballet. However, it was a success, but it wasn't the Nutcracker's comeback. This was not going to make the Nutcracker the superstar that it is today. That comes about a decade later. So let's get into that. In the 1954, so I don't know why I'm in 1954, Balanchine created his own version of the Nutcracker for the New York City Ballet. New York City Ballet is Balanchine's company. So what was different about Balanchine's ballet? The first thing is that Balanchine's style of ballet is different. He's kind of considered like American ballet. How do I give you a concise summary of this? Whereas more European style ballet is a little bit more like elegant, graceful. Balanchine is really all about athleticism. Now, obviously, European is still very athletic and Balanchine is still graceful. But like if we're doing the scales, Balanchine tipped it a little bit more towards athletic. And also, most ballet dancers have hands like this and Balanchine dancers go like this. I don't know why, but they do that. So that's really the biggest difference. Anyway, so it was kind of like this Americanized style of ballet. Balanchine also just kind of like Americanized the idea of the Nutcracker. And there's one critic, Catherine Gunther, who I'm going to read her quote for her. Balanchine's The Nutcracker is a tribute to idealized middle-class family life. Fathers dance with their daughters with gentle ceremony and decorous affection. Mothers come to the rescue of sons left without a dance partner. Children squabble and their parents smooth things over. And most important, the pleasures of holiday feasting are presented unalloyed by working-class anxiety or upper-class decadence. It was premiered in the middle of the 1950s when really like being part of the middle class was the American ideal. It resonated with American families. Also, you know, I'm sure just like New York City, 1950s, was just like a very ripe market for a ballet. So in this 1954 premiere, the Sugar Plum Fairy was Maria Tallchief, and she is... Walter Terry, another critic, said of Maria Tallchief, I'm going to read it. Maria Tallchief as the Sugar Plum Fairy is herself a creature of magic, dancing the seemingly impossible with effortless beauty and movement, electrifying us with her brilliance, enchanting us with her radiance of being. Does she have any equals anywhere, inside or outside of fairyland? While watching her in the Nutcracker, one is tempted to doubt it. And Maria Tallchief is really cool. She was actually the first ever principal dancer who was from the Osage tribe. Osage. I think it's Osage tribe, but she's really cool. The 1954 Nutcracker from the New York City Ballet was a huge success. And so they did it again the next Christmas and every Christmas after that. They just realized that there was enough people who wanted to go every Christmas that it just kind of became a lasting tradition. And so you say, oh, is that the reason why the Nutcracker is so big? No, because in 1957 and then again in 1958, Balanchine's The Nutcracker was shown on national TV. I have parents who have told me this all the time, but in case if you are even younger than I am and you've never heard your parents say this, let me tell you about TV in the 1900s, okay? Basically, now we have so many things. Like, I don't even really watch TV anymore because we have thousands of YouTube channels and podcasts and social media. But before that, we had TV. Even then, there are hundreds of TV channels. So you can watch anything from football to a Hallmark Christmas movie to cooking shows to everywhere in between. Back in the day, so I've been told, there were like 3 channels. So everybody was watching the same thing. There was like 1 hour of news at night, which honestly sounds so nice. Get rid of the 24-hour news cycle. I don't want it. I want a nice little concise little news hour, okay? But that's the kind of TV world that we're talking about. So the New York City Ballet's The Nutcracker premiered on TV in 1957 around Christmas time, when there were like 3 channels, which meant if you turned on the TV in America in 1957, it was like The Nutcracker, the news, or like, I don't know, I Love Lucy. What's a show from the 50s? Anyway, basically what I'm saying is that it's not like a ballet company posting their ballet on YouTube today. And so I think that kind of solidified it as a holiday tradition because everybody had seen it. Like so many people saw it. And then when they were like, oh wait, our local ballet company is doing a version of the Nutcracker. I saw that last year on TV. Let's go to the live one. And of course it's Christmas. I will watch Santa Claus is Coming to Town every single year, even though I know every single word of that movie. Put one foot in front of the other. It's good, and it's a holly jolly tradition. And I think honestly, like ballet companies saw the success of the Nutcracker, and so lots of local companies and studios then began producing their own Nutcracker. And a lot of ballets have kind of this air of prestige of like, ah yes, we are using the original costumes from the 1950s, and we have the original choreography from the 1800s. And a little bit of that is still in Balanchine's The Nutcracker. Like they have the same costumes or like exact replicas, and they use the same Balanchine choreography from the 1950s. And like Ballet West still has the 1944 choreography. They might have tweaked it. However, that's very common in ballet to reuse the same choreography and everything over and over again. However, the Nutcracker is a special ballet in the case that there's almost like freedom given with the Nutcracker for people to adapt it and change it to whatever they need or want. Donald Byrd did a version of the Nutcracker that was set in Harlem. Mark Morris has the Hard Nut. Joffrey Ballet has their own version where they specifically set it in America, not in Germany. Barbie and the Nutcracker. All I'm basically trying to say is that there is so much artistic liberty that is allowed with the Nutcracker, which isn't always allowed with other ballets, that every company has their own version, and every company is able to go and take the Nutcracker and make it into their own thing. Balanchine's Nutcracker definitely put the Nutcracker on the map. After that, ballet saw the success of the Nutcracker and they began to perform it for themselves. And now the Nutcracker is actually a huge part of every ballet company's season. Some companies make even up to like 40% of their yearly revenue just off of the Nutcracker. So if you want to support your local ballet company, go to their Nutcracker. Anyway, I love the Nutcracker, and that is just a little bit of the history, a brief overview that took a really long time, but I hope you enjoyed and you got in the holly jolly spirit talking about the history of our Christmas classic. But yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Happy holidays.